Have you ever noticed one small change in her behavior and felt your attention lock onto it, even though you couldn't explain why? Nothing dramatic happens, no confrontation, no obvious mistake, but something shifts. The way she responds feels slightly more distant. Her energy moves faster, or quieter, or oddly guarded. Conversations still happen, yet they don't quite land the same way, and you start wondering whether you're picking up on something real or just overthinking. Most men are taught to ignore that feeling, to label it insecurity, to tell themselves that asking questions means losing control. But here's a calmer way to look at it. Sometimes what feels like suspicion is simply your awareness noticing a change in pattern. Not every change means betrayal. Not every distance means another man. But patterns don't change without pressure, and pressure always comes from somewhere. This isn't about accusing or assuming the worst. It's about learning how to read shifts without panic, without denial, and without turning yourself into someone you don't respect. Stay with me, and let's slow this down enough to see what that change might actually be telling you. There are some relationships that do not end with a shock. No arguments, no tears, no clear sentence that says everything has changed. Just one evening when you realize you are waiting for more, and she is no longer in a hurry. Energy shifts before behavior does. And that is what confuses men the most. You are not betrayed in a loud, dramatic way. You are not publicly replaced. You simply feel your position in her emotional world getting lighter, as if you are still there but no longer at the center. Most men ignore this phase because it does not feel serious enough to act on. There is no proof, no solid reason to question anything, and they do not want to become suspicious, controlling, or bitter, so they choose silence. They tell themselves maybe she is just busy. Every relationship goes through slow periods. I do not want to make a big deal out of nothing. Those thoughts sound mature, but sometimes they are not maturity at all. They are avoidance. The truth is, suspicion does not appear out of nowhere. It is not a product of imagination. It is the response of someone who senses a misalignment. The issue is not whether you should feel doubt. The issue is what you do with that feeling. Many men see doubt as a sign of weakness. They fear that even asking a question could ruin everything, so they try to love more, give more, show up more, without realizing that investing more into a connection that is quietly pulling away only causes you to lose your position faster. Let us look at a very ordinary example. Before, when you were busy, she would try to work around your schedule. Now, when you take the initiative, she is flexible, not saying no, not saying yes, just leaving it there. Before, she shared small details from her day. A short story, a passing emotion. Now you only hear what needs to be said. No single behavior is big enough to accuse. But when you put them together, you begin to feel like you are in a relationship where your role is slowly shrinking. And the most dangerous part of this phase is not what she may or may not be doing. It is how you convince yourself that nothing is happening. At Her Logic, we do not look at relationships through a lens of blame. We do not hunt for evidence. We observe patterns because patterns do not need confessions to exist. In the next part, we will start identifying the earliest shifts, subtle, everyday, often overlooked, but clear enough to help you answer one important question. Is emotional investment moving away from you? If you have ever felt this, you can leave a very short comment saying, I have felt this, or simply yes, not to reach a conclusion, just to acknowledge that you noticed. The earliest changes are rarely dramatic. They show up as small adjustments, reasonable enough for you to dismiss, vague enough for you to reassure yourself. But in hindsight, they are often the first signs that emotional priority has begun to shift, not toward someone specific, but away from you. Sign 1. Presence becomes flexible everyday behavior. Before, she actively made time. If she was busy, she suggested an alternative. Now plans feel vague. Let me see. Maybe. This week is a bit packed. She does not say no, but she does not commit either. The psychology behind it. Time always follows emotional priority. When attachment weakens, time with you does not disappear. It simply loses certainty. Flexible does not mean she is busier. It means she no longer feels the need to prioritize. A common mistake men make: overcompensating by becoming too accommodating, always being available when she is, accepting last-minute changes, lowering your own standards to fit her schedule. The Her Logic response? Do not complain, do not question, mirror presence. Reduce initiation slightly. Keep your schedule stable. Observe whether the imbalance corrects itself. Her Logic does not look for answers in words, but in rebalancing. If this pattern feels familiar, you can tap like. This is recognition, not blame. Sign 2. Emotional updates stop everyday behavior. The small stories disappear. She no longer shares a random moment from her day, a passing thought, or a feeling she has not fully named yet. Conversations still happen, but only around what needs to be communicated, the psychology behind it. Emotional sharing is a form of bonding. When that flow slows down, it is often because emotional connection is being invested elsewhere. It could be work, friends, or a new inner world. What matters is that it is no longer flowing toward you, a common mistake men make. Asking immediately, "What did I do wrong?" or pushing with too many questions. This unintentionally puts you in the position of asking for access to her emotions, the right response. Stop chasing the right to know. Keep conversations light and natural. Observe whether sharing returns once pressure disappears. Sign 3. Affection loses its warmth. Everyday behavior. There is still touch, still hugs, but less presence. Her eyes are not really there. The pauses between gestures feel longer. You feel like you are receiving comfort, not connection. The psychology behind it. This is a transition phase. Emotion has not fully left, but it is no longer strong enough to sustain intimacy. The body moves on habit. Emotion has already slowed down, a common mistake men make. Increasing intensity, more affection, more sweet words, hoping to wake the feeling back up. This often creates pressure and accelerates distance. The her logic suggestion: do not measure moments, measure consistency. One warm hug does not mean connection has returned. A pattern of emotional coolness is the signal that matters. Sign 4. Your role shrinks everyday behavior. You are informed, not involved. You hear about things after they happen. Important decisions no longer need your input, only your acceptance. The psychology behind it. When someone is no longer central, they still exist in the other person's life, but on the outer ring, this is not betrayal. This is a reordering of priorities, a common mistake. Silently accepting the downgrade and telling yourself you are respecting her space. The right response. No arguing, no demanding. Reestablish boundaries through measured distance, just enough to see whether your position adjusts. Comment aware if you are starting to see the bigger picture. These patterns on their own do not accuse anyone, but when they appear together over time, they tell a very clear story. And in the next part, we will go deeper, where the signs stop feeling comfortable, and where many men begin to deceive themselves the most. After going through the signs we just covered, you may find yourself in a state that is hard to name. Not exactly angry, not exactly certain, just an uneasy feeling where you start wondering whether you are overthinking things. And the truth is, taken one by one, none of the details feel big enough to justify a clear conclusion. But the issue is rarely a single behavior. It lives in the overall rhythm of the relationship. Like a room that slowly gets warmer, you do not notice it until the air starts to feel heavy. Like a steering wheel that is only off by a few degrees. But after a long distance, the ship is no longer headed where it once was. Or like a constant background noise, so quiet that you grow used to it, until silence itself starts to feel unfamiliar. What matters is not what she did in one specific moment. It is what you had to do to adapt to those changes. When someone repeatedly has to reassure themselves that it is probably fine, that maybe they are just being too sensitive, that very act of self-reassurance becomes data. Not to accuse anyone, but to see more clearly where you are standing. And from here, the picture begins to shift to another level. The next patterns no longer feel vague or distant. They touch directly on how a person slowly loses their inner stability. This is the point where many people look back and realize they did not ignore the signs because they could not see them, but because they did not want to. If you have ever been in this feeling, keep listening. If the signs in the previous section were small ripples, then the patterns below are cracks. They are not loud, but they start to shift the internal structure. What makes them dangerous is not her behavior. It is how a man begins to rationalize staying. Sign 5. She becomes protective of her phone, very subtly. The behavior. No hiding, no turning the screen away, just placing the phone face down, taking it with her when she leaves the room. The password stays the same, but the habits change. You cannot point to a single action that clearly looks suspicious. Why this feels unsettling? Because it sits right on the line between respecting privacy and increased guarding. And you do not want to be the one who crosses that line, the psychology behind it. Emotional privacy often increases before physical secrecy. When someone starts protecting their personal space more around you, someone who used to be very close, it signals a reallocation of intimacy. The mistake men make: snooping, turning themselves into a detective to find proof that will calm their anxiety. The her logic perspective. If trust needs surveillance to survive, the relationship is already out of balance. This is not the moment to look for evidence. It is the moment to observe her level of comfort around you. Sign 6. Conflict disappears completely. The behavior. No more arguments, no more debates. Any disagreement ends quickly with whatever you want. You feel relieved, as if the relationship has matured. The uncomfortable reality. This is not peace. This is withdrawal. The psychology behind it. When someone is still invested, they still argue. When they begin to pull away, things no longer feel worth fixing. Silent indifference is quieter than anger, but far more final. A common mistake, confusing calm with safety, telling yourself that fewer arguments must be a good thing. How to read it correctly. Conflict is energy. When the energy disappears, the relationship does not become smoother. It cools down. Sign 7. You start explaining things for her. This is the sign that makes many men the most uncomfortable because it is not about her. It is about you, the behavior. You become the interpreter for every gap. You fill silence with reasons. You lower expectations to avoid disappointment. You tell yourself you are being mature. The metaphor, it is like driving with a misaligned compass. You keep moving, the road still looks straight, but every small decision takes you farther from the original direction. The real danger, it is not that she changed, it is that you adjusted your standards to match her withdrawal. The moment of clarity. Ask yourself, if a close friend told me this exact story, what would I advise him to do? If that answer is different from what you are currently tolerating, that is the signal. These deeper patterns are not meant to accuse, they are meant to wake you up. At her logic, we believe men do not need more blame. They need a warning light bright enough to keep them from driving themselves into a dead end. If you are in this phase, you are not alone. Many men have walked this exact path. What helped them step out was not proof, but honesty with their own perception. If these breakdowns are helping you see more clearly, you can consider subscribing to continue with her logic, not to become more suspicious, but to become more aware. In the final section, we will face the most dangerous sign of all. The moment many men realize the issue was never a third person, but the possibility of being emotionally replaced. There is one final sign, and it is the most dangerous one. Not because it hurts, but because it is silent. Final sign. She no longer reacts when you are absent. The behavior. You slow down, you text less, you initiate less, you are less present, not as a test, but because you are tired. And nothing changes, no questions, no sense of missing you, no adjustment to pull you back in. The psychological reversal. Your first fear might be, there is someone else. But the deeper truth is often this: you have become emotionally replaceable. This is the moment many men face the hardest realization. Not because you did something terribly wrong, not because she is bad or unfaithful, but because your presence no longer creates a difference in her emotional rhythm. And at this point, a familiar reflex appears. Try a little harder, talk more, prove your value, become the version of yourself that was once chosen. But this is the trap. Effort at this stage does not restore connection. It only teaches you how to stay in a position where you are no longer chosen. The core truth that needs to be flipped is this: a healthy relationship is not sustained by one-sided presence. And self-respect is not about leaving too early. It is about knowing when staying causes you to lose yourself. At her logic, we do not talk about catching anyone in the act. Her logic is a framework that helps you catch yourself. In the moment, you are about to sacrifice your boundaries, your standards, and your inner calm just to hold on to a connection that has already shifted. You do not need to compete. You do not need to prove anything. You do not need a clear answer from her to make a clear decision for yourself. You only need to be honest with one very simple, very powerful question. If today you completely stopped showing up, would anything in her world actually be disrupted? The answer is not used to accuse. It is used to free you. Because when you choose to step back with your self-respect intact, you did not lose. You simply refused to keep playing a game where you were no longer chosen as someone important. That is why her logic exists, not to make you more suspicious, but to help you stay clear-minded, steady, and kind to yourself, even in the hardest moments. If this final question resonated with you, feel free to leave a comment sharing your thoughts. And if you want to continue conversations like this without bitterness or preaching, you can subscribe to her logic. We are here to walk with you, not to judge you. And at this point, the most important question to reset is probably not whether she is right or wrong. What deserves a direct look is this: how you are treating yourself inside this relationship. Not to accuse anyone, not to prove anything, simply to see whether your self-respect is being quietly worn down. Many men believe, if I just try a little harder, more patience, more silence, more trust. But there are moments when effort is no longer love. It becomes a delay of the truth. And leaving in those moments is not losing. It is simply the moment you stop convincing yourself with reasons that no longer hold up. That is why her logic exists, not to make you suspicious of every change, not to push you into control or judgment toward women. Her logic is an observational framework. It helps you see patterns instead of clinging to temporary emotions. It is a way to stay calm when things become unclear. And most importantly, it is a compass of self-respect, reminding you that inner clarity will always matter more than holding on to a relationship at any cost. So before you focus on what she might be doing, ask yourself one question. Are you staying because of love or because you have grown used to ignoring your own feelings? If you have ever been in that place, you do not need to explain or defend your choices here. You can share if you want to. And if you want to stay clear-headed, slow things down, and observe more carefully before reacting, her logic will still be here, walking with you, without judgment, without pushing you anywhere.